prayer partners. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Pink Prayer Closet podcast. So, the last episode was pretty lengthy, okay? And I just really wanted to be able to share with you guys, just a lot of the things I've gone through, right? Where I watched God show up and avenge me and just all the things we talked about last time. So, today, the story I want to share is just one that will never leave me, but I'm going to keep it sweet and brief today. um, like I said, being that the last episode was, like I said, pretty long. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you got some encouragement from it. And it helps you to learn to just sit back and just trust that God is going to take care of you. Okay, so for this episode, I just want to talk about something very powerful, one of my favorite faith stories, guys, where God showed up in a way that I could not believe. So, when I was young, I used to have to walk pretty far. Like I had a job, and the job that I had was very far from where I lived. So I lived in one city in East Nashville, and I used to have to go like 3 cities out, small cities, but 3 cities out to get to where my first job was. And so, and the way I got there was what made it really, a whole long process and everything, is because I had to like get off the school bus. My first job was I got it like 15, and I would have to like get off of my school bus, and then I have to like walk, like this very far, dreadfully far distance to get to the city bus. And then from the city bus, I would have to like, do all this stuff, right? Go all the way out to the city, then I have to go across this main road. Like it's too much to even describe. It's just crazy when I look back at it. But I was so determined, and I was just so excited to have, employment and be able to make money and everything, that I was like, you know what? It is what it is. And I was just so proud of myself at that point. Thank God. I mean, just looking back, I'm like, I'm glad I was had that drive in me to do it. So long story short, with all the logistics, if you will, of me getting to work. Of course, there were times when I would miss my bus. I would be trying to rush from my school bus to the city bus. I would miss it, which meant having to wait for the next bus, which meant being late, which meant problems, right? So for this story, I love this because this is where God just really built my faith at a very young age. I think I was 16. I'm pretty sure I was 16 at the time. I think I just turned 16. And so I'm like hustling, hustling, hustling to get to work every day. And finally my supervisor was just like, you know what? I need you to stop, being late for work, whatever. And I was like, oh, she's like, they're not gonna understand all that I have to go through to get here. And I kind of didn't want them to have to understand it because I didn't want to risk them being like, okay, well, if that's the case, you just don't need to have a job. So long story short, I was just like praying, right? I started praying when I was 13 years old. And so I just started praying, for God to like, please God, like help me, work this out. So carry on. A day comes when I'm hustling to get off the school bus. And this is literally probably just a few days after, my boss having to say that to me. And so, gosh, I was so scared. I was so frustrated. I was like, God, I don't want to lose this job. I don't want to mess up my money. I don't mess up any of this. And I don't want to mess up my name. I was very proud of myself. Like once I got to work, it was just, I was, I was very driven. I was a very hard worker. I was all about excellence and all the things. And so long story short, the day comes where I get off the school bus, guys, and I'm like, the school bus was like late getting me to my stop. Mind you, this very young age, I'm sitting here watching my watch, the whole trip from school to get to, get this whole process. So I get off the school bus late, run up, and I'm like, hoping to God, I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God, please let me miss my bus. Please let me miss my bus. Get all the way to the bus stop, and sure enough, the bus is passing me. My heart literally sank. I'm like, God, I cannot believe that I'm about to be suspended. But I had so much faith in God, right? And I knew that, okay, Lord, I missed the bus. I remember my exact prayer to God in that moment was, God, I know you can't get me to work on time now. This is what I told God. I said, I know you can't get me to work on time now, but if you can just at least touch my supervisor's heart so that when I get to work, they do not suspend me. I was like, God, just please just work on the other end. Just work it out on the other side. So I'm standing here now. Don't try this at home, please, to anybody listening. Don't do this. It's a whole different day and age. And I was totally being led by God in this moment. So I'm sitting here at the bus stop and I'm just like waiting for the next bus. This van, white van, okay, don't get in any vans to anybody listen, please, I beg of you. But for, in that moment, this van pulls up and I was a pretty, like, I was kind of green at that point in my life because I was very unschooled, if you will. But I was also, I'm also like no nonsense. It's one thing when people are slick and, they know how to slip in. But that was just like blatant to me. Like, I'm not getting any random vans. I'm not doing different stuff. But at that moment, this van pulls up and he rolls up and he rolls his window down and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Do you need a ride?" And my logical self is saying, "No, like I don't need to, like, I'm not about to get in the van with you, right?" But something literally came over me at that moment and it was like, it's safe. Like, it's safe. This I can't even describe the feeling that it wasn't even like an emotional feeling. It was literally like something coming over me saying it's safe to get in this van, right? So I'm having this sort of almost out of body experience, right? There's this big dichotomy, if you will, happening within me where it's like one part of me is like, trust God, is safe. The other part of me is like, run. And so, but I knew that it was God. I had this weird peace come over me that's like, get in the van. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, sure, I need a ride. And he's like, where are you going? And I told him, and I'm thinking, okay, that's probably going to be too far. So then I could back out of whatever this is. And he was like, okay, get in, that's fine. And so I was like, okay, great. So I get in, I get in this van. This man literally says, and it was a church van, by the way, but even in my mind, I was like, this could be a church van, but this could be a cover up. But something literally told me, get in, it's fine. This is all happening within me at the moment. And so I get into the van and so I get into the van and the guy is like completely quiet the whole time. It was like he did not want to talk to me. He was just driving straight up the street. And it was like literally like one street led through all the cities to get to the place where I worked at. And so he's just like driving. He's not saying anything to me. He's not trying to make small talk. He definitely didn't say anything inappropriate to me, never touched me, never acted like it, nothing. He was just looking straight out the window, just driving the whole time. And it wasn't like weird. It wasn't like one of those like, he looks like somebody like off of one of these crazy shows. It wasn't anything, it was nothing like weird about him. He was just focusing, driving the whole time, like straight ahead. And maybe in his mind, he was like, I don't want this girl to like accuse me of something. I don't know what he was thinking. But long story short, he just drove me straight to where I had to go. Now, mind you, I told you where I worked at was this huge, like 4 lane street to get across, one of the busiest streets in that part of Tennessee. And so he drives me up, he drops me off, right? And so as I got out of the van, I step down. I go back to close the door. I reach back to close the door, but I was going to turn and tell him thank you. And when I tell you this is the honest to God truth, as I know God can hear me right now, and I'm not going to lie to you, he was gone. Okay. When I turned around, just in that little bit of time, when I turned around, the van was out of sight. I looked to my left, I looked to my right. This man was nowhere in sight. I'm baffled, but I'm also trying to get to work on time. So I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't know. I'm in my mind, I kind of blow it off and I'm like running, to get to work. Right. So now I'm hustling through the traffic. I'm getting over here. I'm like, okay, Lord, okay, Lord, okay, Lord. Just please, I'm just anticipating this conversation with my supervisor, but I'm also trusting God that he's going to do something, right, to keep me from getting in trouble. Right. Like, God, I don't want to be suspended. So I'm believing that God can do that part at least. He can keep me from getting suspended. I rush in, get to the clock as fast as possible. I'm like, you know, running through the building, trying to get to the time clock. It was back when they used time clocks and everything, and run to the time clock to get in as soon as possible. And when I tell you, God was there. I got in and got to that time clock and I punched my time and I literally thought I must be seeing things. I was 10 minutes early for work. I was 10 minutes early for work. And that moment was so powerful for me because when I said those words to God, it was like God acted on it and he took them, he helped me to understand that there is nothing too big for God. I told God in that moment at the bus stop, I said, God, I know you can't get me to work on time at now. I know you can't get me to work on time now, but if you can at least just go ahead of me and and help my supervisor to not suspend me. The power of this amazing God that he acted on what I said to him. And I never forgot it. I never forgot it. Because what it taught me at that young age and in that moment was to never tell God what he cannot do. Don't ever. The thought that I even, which of course I was innocent when I said it, but now I get it. In that moment, my mind was blown. My mind was blown. I'm telling you. And if I didn't know better too, I would literally believe that I was in the van with an angel. When I tell you the way this whole situation went down, it's like God pulled up and said, "Get in the car and let's go." And he got me to work 10 minutes early. And it's almost like, you know how your parents might look at you and say, "Don't you ever say that again?" It literally was the way I walked away from that moment. Like, don't you ever say that again. Don't you ever tell God what he can't do. And so I love that story. It lived in me all those years. Not that I'm that much older, I'm just saying, but it lived in me. And it's like God taught me that very powerful lesson. Don't you ever tell God what he cannot do. He is God and he is God all alone by himself. He is able to do the impossible. There is nothing too hard for God. I share that with you, and I hope that story will live in your spirit the way it's lived in mine. God did not just get me to work on time. God did more than I could have even asked or imagined. My mind was on supervisor conversation. God was like, there is no conversation. There will be no supervisor conversation because I have now gotten you to work earlier than you would have gotten to work anyway. Don't tell God what he can't do. Don't even think it. Whatever it is that the enemy is trying to creep in and convince you that God is not capable of doing, trust me and trust God, most importantly, that there is nothing that God is not able to do. Okay. Have confidence in God no matter what it is that Satan is trying to convince you that he can't do. And take this from the story too. What it looked like was not what it was going to be. In that moment, I was a girl who was about to get suspended for something that was really beyond my control. I was a girl who was about to get suspended from my job. But what the reality was, God had a different plan. God used that moment. He allowed me to have that pressure on me on one side with the fear of being late and being suspended and all those things. But God used that moment to teach me something that was going to stick with me and help me understand Him for a lifetime. Sometimes God allows things to look a certain way, but He's not going to allow the end to look anything like the beginning. He's going to do something so powerful, just like it says in Ephesians 3:20 through 21. He can do immeasurably more than all you can ask, think, or imagine. Sometimes God is just setting the stage so that He can show up. And as we like to say down south, show out. Okay. So anyway, I hope that encourages your faith. I hope that whatever it looks like right now, that you are able to take something from this story to understand that God Just because it looks like it right now does not mean it is it. God is able to do the immeasurable. God is able to get you, just like He was able to get me to work 10 minutes early at a moment where I'm expecting He can just show up on the back end and do the at least. God said, I'm not going to do the at least. I don't have to do the at least. I'm going to do immeasurably more than you could ask, think, or imagine. Okay. So anyway, I love you guys. I hope that you can find some encouragement from that story. Like I said, one of the most beautiful moments in my life. It taught me so much about God. And I just hope that it can teach you something about him too. Dig down deep, and you may not have to dig that deep, but just take a moment and meditate on one of your own stories and recall the power of God at work in your life. And let yourself be reminded of his goodness, his power. Okay, I love you. I hope that you will become one of the prayer partners over here by going ahead and clicking that subscribe button, guys, so we can continue to grow in our faith. We can continue to grow in our conversations with God and our prayer life. Some great things happening over here. I can't wait to show you guys some of the things that I am working on. I can't wait to tell you guys about this amazing event that I have coming up. I'm super excited about it. Just letting God lead me and how it should go and everything. Some of you guys who have already subscribed already know about it because it's how we met and that's how you can't land it here. It's because through me telling you about the event. But anyway, I'm super excited about the things that God is doing. Please go ahead and, like I said, become a prayer partner. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And if you have anything that I could be praying about, send me an email at the pinkprayercloset@gmail.com. I would love to be standing in faith with you about whatever it is that you're believing God for. I love you and I hope you're having a great day. Talk to you soon. See you next time.